Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the world. Emperor of Rome, commander of its legions, master of its economy, its law, its borders. And he spent the last decade of his life on a frozen battlefield at the edge of the empire, writing private notes to himself about how to remain a human being. Not how to win wars, not how to consolidate power, not how to be remembered, how to stay intact. That notebook was never meant to be published. He wrote it for himself, a man under siege, trying not to lose the thing inside him that the world was constantly trying to take. He called it, simply, his notes to himself. We call it meditations. And it is the most precise manual ever written for the exact war most men in 2026 are losing without knowing they're in it. The war being waged on male interiority is not fought with weapons. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't require your consent. It simply proceeds through the architecture of the attention economy, through the slow replacement of depth with stimulation, through an environment engineered to ensure that a man is never alone with his own thoughts long enough to develop any. Interiority is the capacity for inner life, the ability to think independently, to sit with difficulty, to generate meaning from the inside rather than consuming it from the outside. It is what allows a man to know what he actually thinks, what he actually values, what he would actually die for. And it is precisely this capacity that the modern environment is most efficiently destroying. Not through malice, through design. Every system that profits from your attention profits more when you are reactive than when you are reflective. More when you are anxious than when you are at peace. More when you are dependent on external input than when you are capable of generating your own. Aurelius understood this dynamic without ever having seen a smartphone, because the war on interiority is not new, only its weapons are. When Aurelius wrote Meditations, he was facing a version of this war that would be recognizable to any man today. Constant noise, constant demands, constant pressure to perform, to respond, to be present everywhere for everyone simultaneously. An empire of a million opinions about how he should live, what he should prioritize, who he should be. And underneath all of it, the persistent risk that in managing everything external, he would lose everything internal. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not a motivational quote. It is a survival instruction from a man who understood that the greatest threat to his sovereignty was not the Germanic tribes pressing against his borders. It was his own mind, poorly governed, reactive, pulled in every direction by things that ultimately did not matter. The Meditations is not a philosophy of passivity, it is a philosophy of radical selectivity, a manual for deciding what actually deserves your attention and defending that decision against everything that wants to override it. Aurelius organized his inner life around 3 disciplines, not commandments, disciplines, things requiring daily practice, not single decisions. The first, perception. What you tell yourself about events determines their power over you, not the events themselves, the story you construct around them. A man who has trained his perception does not spiral when things go wrong. He sees clearly. He names what is actually happening rather than what he fears is happening. He refuses to add suffering to suffering through catastrophizing. In 2026, this means developing the capacity to look at the feed, the news, the noise, and choose what it means to you rather than accepting the meaning it arrives with. The second, action. Everything Aurelius did was oriented toward what he called the common good, not in a naive sense, but in the sense of acting in accordance with genuine values rather than fear or appetite. The man who acts from values rather than impulse is always more free than the man who acts from impulse, regardless of which man has more external freedom. This is what Aurelius meant by virtue, not morality policing, the alignment between what a man believes and what a man does. Most men in 2026 live in a state of chronic misalignment, believing one thing, doing another, and feeling the friction of that gap as a vague but persistent sense that something is wrong. The third, will. Aurelius had a specific concept he called the reserve clause, the willingness to want what happens rather than only what you planned. This is not resignation. It is the difference between a man who is broken by every obstacle and a man who incorporates obstacles into his direction. The Stoics had a phrase, amor fati, love of fate, not tolerance of what happens, love of it as the material you were given to work with. This is the discipline that makes a man unconquerable, not because nothing can harm him, but because nothing can permanently redirect him. The reason meditation survives 2,000 years and still sells in airport bookshops in 2026 is not sentiment. It is because the problem it addresses hasn't changed. The enemy is always the same: distraction, reactivity, the surrender of the inner life to the demands of the outer one, the slow erosion of a man's capacity to think, to feel, to want something real through the accumulated weight of 10,000 things that wanted a piece of him. Aurelius wasn't immune to this. He was not a saint sitting above the noise in serene detachment. He was a man in the middle of it, tired, grieving, carrying things he didn't ask to carry, writing himself instructions at the end of the day to remember who he was trying to be. That is what makes it useful. Not that he had it figured out, that he kept returning to the practice even when he didn't. The war on male interiority wins by default. It doesn't need to defeat you. It just needs you to stay busy enough, stimulated enough, reactive enough that you never develop the inner life that would allow you to notice what's being taken. Aurelius spent an empire's worth of resources and a military career's worth of energy, and still carved out the space to write to himself about what actually mattered. That's not a coincidence. That's the most important thing he did. The man who governs his own mind first governs everything else second. The man who never governs his mind governs nothing, regardless of what his title says. Meditations was written on a campaign, between battles, at the edge of a collapsing frontier. The world Aurelius was managing was coming apart in every direction, and he wrote, "Focus on what is in your control. Return to your values. Do not be moved by what does not deserve to move you." He wrote this to himself, every day, because every day he needed reminding. That is the manual, not 10 rules, not a system, not a productivity framework. A man returning, daily, to the question of what he actually is, and refusing to let the answer be decided by anything outside him. That practice is available to any man. The only question is whether he considers his own interior worth defending.